Jesus is out of time. We see sides of Jesus' personality, aspects of his humanity that we've never seen yet. This is going to be the most important thing that I ever do in my life. I had no choice, and thank God I didn't have a choice.
Well, Jonathan Roumie, it's a pleasure to be able to have you here on Charisma. And we are talking about The Chosen Season 5. I can't believe that it has been 5 seasons already. And we are getting closer and closer to some big things that are going to be happening about. And if we've read Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, we know what's going to be happening. But I want to hear from you. What makes Season 5 of The Chosen different from previous seasons?
Well, I think we're at the point where Jesus is out of time in our story, and he knows that basically the whole reason he came to earth is days away. And for as much as he's been trying to warn and inform his disciples and prepare his followers, he's learning that not everything is quite clear to them, and that causes a bit of consternation, a bit of concern, but also, because he's Jesus, he knows who we are and the brokenness of humanity and the fallen nature and the sort of waywardness of the story of his people throughout salvation history. So I don't think it's all completely new to him, but it's new to them. Mm-hmm. And we see sides of Jesus' personality and aspects of his humanity that we've never seen yet thus far. And that I don't think anybody's quite captured on film in any kind of retelling of the story in this way, especially in the first 4 seasons of build up to the ultimate sacrifice Jesus made on behalf of humanity.
Yeah. So you kind of mentioned some of these different aspects of Jesus, or the different parts of his personality and character that are going to come out in this season. And we've seen already from some of the things that have been released, a little bit of teasers here and there. We've seen the poster of Jesus going into the temple with the whip. Right. And I know that in John chapter 2, it actually says that Jesus made the whip. So this wasn't just a spontaneous thing where he saw a whip and he just started going crazy.
Yeah,
but there was a
whip shop
was a purpose
that he
for it.
Went into or anything like that, or a whip vendor.
Yeah.
And he didn't buy it on first century eBay. He made a whip out of cords. Yeah. And basically we sort of know how it goes, and people will get to actually see exactly our version of how that went. And it is something to behold. How they wrote the story, how they wrote those scenes was just beautiful and powerful and emotional. Yeah. And I think really it's kind of what this has been, the last 4 seasons has been building to. Right.
So we know that obviously Jesus didn't ever sin. And so what he did was not a sinful thing, but actually the Bible talks about be angry, but not sin. So this was a righteous anger. As an actor playing this part of Jesus, it's easy to show anger in a negative side and what that can be destructive. But how did you prepare for that moment or that scene where you know that you're going to have to demonstrate anger, but from a righteous standpoint?
So being the perfect, sinless Son of God, Jesus didn't experience the kinds of anger to the fault of sinfulness that we as humans do, right? So, what does that mean? Well, you have to consider what is generating the anger. And in this case, it was essentially the desecration of the temple by the people who are supposed to uphold as models of righteousness and faithfulness to God the Father, what temple worship should look like. And at that point, it was a mockery. People were using the temples for extortion, basically. And I think Jesus, through the eyes and lens of God, basically hit his limit, and he couldn't take anymore, and he needed to quite literally clean house, clean the temple, and make an example of what was happening there and his displeasure with it all. Because ultimately, the sacrifices that and the worship that should be going on in the temple are all for God. And when you have the corruption of humanity inhabiting the temple, the first thing he needed to do was just cleanse it. He just needed to get rid of it. And so it's from that place that he's acting. So for me, as the actor who isn't God in reality, but playing God, playing Jesus, how do I relate to that? Well, I can't relate to the sinlessness of Jesus. I can only relate to the humanity in my own flawed sense of it. But I aspire to please God in the way that he wants us to please him, to worship him, and to be completely pure of heart, to be undefiled, as Jesus wanted the temple undefiled, to make the temple of our own bodies, my own body, as undefiled as it ought to be for when entering into worship for God. So for me, it's a matter of considering, like, what would an offense to God look like? What kind of a reaction would my offense to God cause within him? And then to try to play that as best as I can for the scenes. And I think we see that in a way that we haven't seen before in season 5. So it's really exciting. Some of the things that we did, and especially the scene in the temple, I think it's going to take a lot of people. I think a lot of people are going to be kind of shocked, because it's such a passionate display of, God's longing for the righteousness of his people.
Yeah. And one of the things that I know that is a main feature of this season is the Last Supper. In fact, that's the title, I guess, of the season. And so you're connecting the Jewish Passover with the Christian Last Supper. I had a conversation with Rabbi Sobel, so I know that he actually took you and the cast through the Passover. Can you tell me what that was like, and especially with this whole Last Supper moment? I mean, there's a lot of weightiness to that.
Yeah, I mean, it's the establishment of the new covenant. I mean, it's what it is, and it's using the context of the previous covenant to set up the new covenant, the eternal covenant that Jesus has with his people, through the Eucharist, through the Last Supper, through the institution of the Eucharist, through the Holy Communion. That the Last Supper for many Christians, especially Catholics like myself, is, that is the centerpiece of our faith, the source and summit of the Christian life. We believe is the Eucharist, which came out of the Last Supper, and Jesus Christ being the living Eucharist. For me, getting that scene right spiritually and entering into the portrayal of that scene was, for me, in season 5, probably one of the two, if not the most paramount scene to try to recreate. I had a lot of spiritual firepower behind me. I had a lot of people praying for me. I had my own spiritual director with me at the time of the filming of that scene, and which took several days. Mm-hmm. And so it was really important for me to be in the right spiritual space, mental and physical space, to try to, in however it happens, kind of cosmically transmit the essence and importance and the weight of that moment in human history, at the very least in Christian history. But certainly for those of us who call ourselves Christians. I mean, in human history, really, it's a turning point.
Yeah. And I'm looking forward to seeing that scene as it's being unfolded throughout, I believe, probably many different episodes, because there's so many facets of that and different ways that they can reconnect to that. But we know that this season is leading up to the betrayal, leading up to what eventually I'm believing next season will be the crucifixion.
Yeah.
But you have to connect with the emotions of Jesus. For this season specifically, what has been your motivation?
Other than Jesus, I don't know that I have a clear answer for that. Other than trying to, as authentically and humbly as I can, be allowed to be kind of a participant in those seminal moments of his life, and on screen. I think that's the inspiration is the story itself.
Yeah.
Yeah, every scene that I go into, especially with the Last Supper and the Garden of Gethsemane, and all of them really were, especially the scenes that have these, that are right out of Scripture and have these big emotional entry points into Jesus's ministry and the course and the trajectory of his story. I am deeply devoted in prayer right up to the filming of those scenes, and then throughout the filming, in between takes, I'm on my knees most of the time, just praying that the Lord allows me to create or to inhabit a sort of a window pane of his being, that people are able to see through me to him, to kind of act as this kind of divine mirror reflecting the brightness of who he is and what he's done for humanity. That's my inspiration, is the prayers that I submit to reaching that end.
I just really appreciate what you said there, how in between takes you are on your knees still in prayer, seeking the Lord, asking for him to let you do this part, do this role the best way you can. You've taken this role really to heart, and it's people see you and they associate Jesus with you. And I know I saw the Amazon miniseries Jonathan and Jesus, which, thank you for giving a look into your life and how The Chosen has affected or changed your life drastically there.
Of course.
Can you share just a little bit about how The Chosen has changed you? I know we could watch that whole series there, but just kind of, especially season 5, how has this changed you?
Jonathan and Jesus, now on Amazon Prime.
It's great. No, I highly recommend it. Yes.
Thank you. No, yeah, that was sort of an early snapshot of the process. I think it was in between seasons 2 and 3, and just getting into seasons 3, and now even it's evolved even since then. But there is no shortage of testimonies I get from people all over the world. I mean, even in my most recent travels, I had people in the Middle East that recognized me and were really, really moved by the series, and it's in their own language. I mean, I think we're in 75 languages now, and wow. So it's moving and transforming hearts and minds and souls all over the world, and it's an affirmation for me that this is going to be the most important thing that I ever do in my life, because of how it's affected people. And on an eternal level, God willing, that people can allow Christ into their lives after encountering him perhaps for the first time through this series in a way that will affect their spirituality and potentially their salvation. So there isn't anything that is more important artistically that I could ever do that supersedes that.
Yeah.
So I have to take it to heart because, I mean, this is through my own story. This is, some of which you saw in the documentary. Like, this has been my journey. The amount of preparation that the Lord has done within my life to get me to this point is nothing but, nothing short of awe-inducing. It's like, wow, this happened and that happened and this happened and this happened. It's like you look at it in hindsight and it's kind of extraordinary. I mean, even still, things happen now still that I'm like, wow, like the Lord is just literally has his hand on what I'm doing, because I couldn't accomplish any of this without him. None of this is to my credit. It's all to his credit. And without him and without his influence on my life and the grace that he's shown me in allowing me to turn to him in a way that that I'd never turned to him before, but came to out of necessity, and realizing that I didn't have any other choice but to completely surrender and turn my life over to him, and wholly and completely and holistically. None of that could have been accomplished through my doing or even my own will. Like I hadn't willed my surrender. My surrender came out of, dire necessity, because I had no choice. And thank God I didn't have a choice, because I don't think I would have been strong enough to choose him in the way that he said he gave me the option to, 7 years ago now, this coming spring. So it's been all glory to him. That's all I can say.
Amen. That's awesome. Jonathan, one of the things that you do so well is interacting with the actors that play the disciples. And so as Jesus and the disciples interact, those conversations really let you see inside of the mind of Jesus and the mind of the disciples. I know there's going to be a lot of those moments in this season, as there are for all the seasons. But can you just kind of tell us about some of those moments with you and a disciple that has meant a lot for you this season?
There's how much time we got? There's quite a few. I think Jesus's interactions with Mary Magdalene are so sacredly special, because she's been there from the very, very beginning, especially in our iteration of the story. Our introduction is through her own brokenness. Our introduction to Jesus is through the story of Mary Magdalene's brokenness and the demonic possession she came out of. And then we know kind of how she figures into the passion and the resurrection, scripturally, and the weight and responsibility and authority that he gave her as a woman at a time where women didn't hold authority. Traditionally, we consider her the apostle to the apostles, because she was there at the very first moments where the other disciples weren't. So I think interactions with her, in season 5 also, we see a lot of interaction between Jesus and Judas, and the setting up of that story point, which is, it's a painful one. But I think we give a little bit of insight and some plausible backstory about what that relationship could have looked like, and
Yeah.
what it would have meant on some level, even though it was predestined for Jesus to basically lose one of his followers, one of the 12. I mean, Judas had a place among the 12 until he didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's one of the more fascinating storyline interactions that we do this season. And then, of course, with John, the beloved disciple John, there is the fostering and the nurturing of the relationship that allows us to fast forward into Scripture. Like, well, John was the only male disciple at the foot of the cross, as far as we know. It's the only one that's named. And why is that? What sets that up? And so those are the kinds of questions that the Chosen very astutely and asks, and brilliantly through our writers attempts to answer in ways that people really haven't thought of before, but I think are completely plausible and completely, even probable, if not possible, given, our facility and knowledge of human nature and the human mind and the cultural and societal norms of the time.
Yeah. I can't wait to see this on the big screen, because I know because it's going to be releasing on the big screen before it gets on our streaming apparatuses there. What are you excited about people seeing on the big screen?
Oh man. I mean, every season, by the grace of God, we are able to sort of level up the production value, and season 5 is no exception to that. It's bigger than season 4. It's more action-packed and emotionally driven, and goes deeper than we went even in season 4, like individually as well as, with the totality of the group of disciples with Jesus and the Pharisees. Like all of the characters, we're just, it's like you're peeling an onion, and you just keep finding new layers from each and every one of these characters that we've been building over the last 4 seasons. So I think we get to see that in a way that visually will look better than it's ever looked before. We're now able to afford visual effects in a way that we didn't the first few seasons. So season 3, we started to get a little bit more money where we can, like, okay, let's walk on water, and it's like, we can do that. Oh, I guess we can do that. So,
which was amazing how you guys did that. That was so well done.
I mean, and if you talk to Will, our special effects supervisor, like the story of how that came together, and how even from season 1, like the fish, the miracle of the fish came, like there's miracles throughout every facet and phase of the filming of this series that just defy logic, and at times seem to defy science and possibility. But that's how we know that the Lord is in here, because there's things that we could never do, and I'm sure Dallas has or would tell you the same thing, that it's just the show is better than all of us individually. What the show has done, all of us together, is and what God has done with the show is greater than any individual contribution could be measured for this show. It's gone beyond our expectations in so many ways.
Yeah. Well, Jonathan, thank you so much for taking the time to share with us a little bit of insight into the mind of Jesus, played by Jonathan Roumie, in season 5. Thank you so much for taking this time.
Thanks, John. I really appreciate your time.